Tuesday as the impact of Canadian wildfires ripples south. Washington remains under a very unhealthy air quality alert. Almost 450 fires are still active in Canada. The smoke shroud has sent solar power generation in parts of the eastern U.S. plunging by more than 50%. Some of the world's largest investment banks are distancing themselves from hedge fund manager Crispin Odey, hours after fresh allegations of sexual assault. Morgan Stanley is cutting ties, while JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs are said to be reviewing their links with Odey Asset Management. A law firm representing Odey told the Financial Times he strenuously disputes allegations published in their report. Global News, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bonnie Quinn, and this is Bloomberg. Sherry.
Hi, Bonnie. We're 12 minutes into trading in Japan, Korea, and Australia. Let's see what's moving in the markets. Belle.
Thanks, Sherry. Yeah, just taking a look at what we're seeing in terms of iron ore linked stocks this morning. Some of these big miners down in Australia because they're mostly moving to the upside here. And that is as we see this expectation continuing to build in markets that we are going to see further support and stimulus measures coming through given the economic weakness broadly. So Singapore iron ore contract now trading at its highest since April 19, but we have seen its rally over the past 2 weeks, about 15% gains there. As I said, really this signal that perhaps we will see more efforts to try and revive the stalled economy. We're getting further details on that in the next hour, just the level of economic weakness with the CPI, PPI data expected to come in. CPI looking to be subdued. Deflation, though, further entrenched in PPI, and that's expected to contract 4.2% on the year. But that is why we are seeing these Aussie miners moving a little bit higher at the start of trading here. Heidi.
We're still ahead. China's financial watchdog Sheep vows to further open up the markets. We did see that reaction in Chinese equities. This is opening up to foreign banks and investment firms. We get more details and some analysis on what we're hearing from the Lujiazui Forum later this hour. This is Bloomberg.
Excitement into easy-flowing conversation. Reuniti, the refreshing, sweet, and easy-to-drink Italian wine. Reunite with delight.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has picked Hafiz Gaye Erkan, as the new central bank governor. It is a move that may signal a return to more conventional monetary policy. Let's get to Bloomberg's FX and rate strategist David Finnerty. So what are the implications? Because there has been a lot of worry and also a lot of hope in terms of how we could see changes made when it comes to how monetary policy and central bank independence is being handled.
Yeah, certainly it would be. I think it's a positive, definitely. If you look back at the history, obviously what happened was Turkey's had various central bank governors, and they haven't convened to President Erdogan's stance of unorthodox policies. Then they tended to go, unfortunately. The most recent central bank governor slashed rates from 19% to 8.5%, despite surging inflation. So now with the markets looking for more orthodox policies coming in, she obviously has a good reputation because she was former Goldman and had worked at First Republic, so she knows the markets a lot better. Combined with Mehmet Simsek, that is positive. So the idea of orthodox policies is good. Now the question is, will they actually be enacted? That's what the market's really looking for. It sounds good on paper, but in reality, what will happen? And certainly with the central bank meeting in place coming up, that'll be of high focus.
Yeah, many central bank decisions actually coming up next week. What are you focusing as we continue to see this rate divergence as well play out around the world?
Yeah, certainly. Well, obviously the Fed will be the main central bank next week. You have US CPI coming out before that, which is, well, the headline's supposed to come down. Inflation is still supposed to be sticky at above 5%, so the Fed's going to focus on that. And if you look at particularly the core personal consumption expenditure index, which is the preferred measure of inflation, that actually uptick in the most recent measure. So inflation is definitely sticky there. So while the Fed may pause, the question is, what's its dot plot do? How many rate hikes does it say? You've had someone like James Bullard saying, hey, I think 2 more rate hikes should be in. And remember, the market's only really looking for 1. So that dot plot is more hawkish than expected. That's one thing to look out for. Then obviously when it comes to Turkey, that central bank decision in basically 2 weeks becomes extremely important. At the moment, the question is, given that reserves are draining quite quickly, given that there's a current account deficit, given the surge in inflation, and given that the lira is under pressure, the question is, how long can you keep defending the lira? And at some point, interest rates have to go up if you're going to prop it up. Now the question becomes, how high, if they go, how high is high enough to placate the market? It's more than likely to be very high indeed. Again, the irony is a hike, if it's not high enough, could still see pressure on the lira. So everyone's going to be really focused on that central bank meeting in 2 weeks' time to see if rates are raised and if they are, by how much.
Bloomberg FX and rate strategist David Finnerty there joining us from Singapore. Now, here in the U.S., sources say former President Donald Trump has been indicted over his refusal to return classified documents found at his Florida home. For more, let's bring in Bloomberg senior editor Wendy Benjaminson in Washington. Wendy, what have we learned?
Well, we have learned that from Donald Trump himself, who put something up on his Truth Social post, that he was asked to appear in federal court in Miami at 3 p.m. on Tuesday because he has been charged with a number of crimes related to his refusal to return classified documents that he took from his home in Mar-a-Lago, that he took from the White House to his home in Mar-a-Lago. Excuse me.
This is an unprecedented indictment in terms of a former president never being charged with committing federal crimes. How does it play into what we see when it comes to the election race?
Oh, well, it's quite a wrench for most candidates in the race. It certainly gives his Republican opponents for the Republican nomination certainly a lot of material to work with because they will be running against the only president who has ever been charged with a crime after leaving office or before or during. And so that gives them plenty of campaign material. Whether it persuades Trump's loyal fan base, it's a whole other question. He may still, despite the indictment and despite being on trial during the primary season next year, he may still be able to pull off the nomination. Whether he can win the general election, which involves everyone voting, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, people of other parties, is a longer shot given this.
This is coming on the back of already a civil lawsuit as well as ongoing probes from the DOJ and also state-level investigations as well?
Yes, he's already been charged in New York, Manhattan court, for various fraud-related charges that are related to his payments to Stormy Daniels, who was a porn star that he allegedly had an affair with, and he paid her off not to discuss this alleged affair during his first campaign for president. So he's already been charged.